On This Week in Enterprise Tech, it's time. The chevrons are locking and we're stepping through the gate for the 200th time. Twiet on the set.
Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
Bandwidth for This Week in Enterprise Tech is provided by CacheFly at CACHEFLY.com.
This is Twiet. This Week in Enterprise Tech, episode 200, recorded July 29th, 2016. Welcome to 200. This Week in Enterprise Tech is brought to you by IT Pro TV. IT Pro TV is an easy, entertaining approach to online IT training. For a free 7-day trial and 30% off the life of your account, go to itpro.tv/enterprise and use the code Enterprise30. Welcome to Twiet. This Week in Enterprise Tech, it's the show dedicated to the enterprise professional, the IT pro, and the geek who just wants to know how the world is connected. I'm your host, Father Robert Ballecer, the digital Jesuit, your guide to all things in the enterprise. But, of course, I'm not guiding you by myself because this is a special edition of Twiet. It's our 200th episode. So we thought we had to bring in all the hosts, starting, of course, with my good friend, the geek in paradise, Mr. Brian Chee, the director of the Advanced Network Computing Laboratory in Honolulu, Hawaii. Brian, word has it, a little birdie told me that you're going submersible crazy.
Yeah, actually, at the moment, we are making all kinds of really cool things. And I just hosted the Kailua High School tethered ROV team. And they came to go and see some of our autonomous underwater vehicles. And it's going to be a lot of fun. And big shout out to the Twiet Riot. Thank you for all the great ideas. The Enterprise Cookbook is being worked on.
Folks, that's what you never want to do to T-Bird. Give him more ideas because that man is obsessed. Oh, of course, someone else who is obsessed, but in a good way, is Mr. Curtis Franklin from Information Week Radio. Curtis, it's good to have my friend from the other coast. How are you doing over in Florida?
Padre, it's in the heat of summer here in Florida. It's 90s in the temperature, 80s in the humidity, and the tourists are dropping like flies. So it's a great day here in the swamp.
I don't know if it's a good day to have tourists dropping like flies, but I'll take your word for it. Now, someone else, the newest member of the Twiet crew is my good friend, my former co-host on Coding 101, Mr. Lou Maresca. He is a senior developer over at Microsoft in their fantastically popular CRM Dynamics department. Lou, how are things up in the Great Pacific Northwest?
Doing fantastic. Yeah, this is the hackathon week, so the 1 week at Microsoft. So doing lots of fun stuff and seeing some neat projects.
Well, gentlemen, it's great to have you. We've got a good show lined up for the Twiet Riot. So not only are we going to do our standard blips, we're going to talk a little bit about the news, but we've got a video that I recorded last week with some of our friends from Kingston Technologies who thought we might want to take a sneak peek at a yet-to-be-released enterprise SSD line of products. So we'll be getting to that in just a bit. And then we're bringing back two friends, two former guests of This Week in Enterprise Tech who are going to be giving us their musings on the future of our field. But before we get to that, let's go ahead and jump into the blips. This first one is all about AWS being off the chain. Amazon Web Services continues to astound. Last year, the online retailing giant started breaking out AWS numbers, and we got a first look at its impressive earnings. Yesterday, they reported AWS revenue for the second quarter of 2016, and once again, Amazon came out on top over fast-charging Microsoft, IBM, and Google. AWS earned $2.87 billion in the quarter, up 58% year over year. Additionally, profit was up to $863 million. That's a 121% increase over quarter 2 2015. This is consistent with Amazon's switch from reinvesting all profits back into infrastructure and to now taking profit from well-mature build-outs. It's not all rosy for Amazon. Their growth is slowing down to 58% after hitting 64% and 69% in the past 2 quarters, and Microsoft's Azure growth is increasing in leaps and bounds. But as that same infrastructure is supporting a $30.4 billion marketing and revenue juggernaut, they're probably not losing much sleep.
Well, there's a new cloud giant in town. Oracle announced Thursday that it plans to acquire NetSuite for $9.3 billion and said that the deal would not affect future development of either company's product lines. Full development and support would continue for both, according to an FAQ posted by the company regarding the deal. NetSuite adds a strong lineup of cloud-based ERP solutions to Oracle's portfolio that puts the company in a stronger position to win deals where cloud is the deciding factor. Oracle executives have promised customers the company would be a leader in both the cloud and on-premise with a hybrid product strategy that would ensure the feature sets of cloud-based products matching the feature sets of on-premise based products. It's unclear if the NetSuite acquisition will alter that plan given the feature overlap between Oracle's and NetSuite's products. The deal should not be a huge surprise, though, because NetSuite was founded by former Oracle executive Evan Goldberg with $125 million in backing from Oracle founder, chairman, and current CTO Larry Ellison.
When the renowned security expert Peter Zatko, aka Mudge, says your software is insecure, you better listen. Zatko was one of the founding fathers of members of the Loft, a Boston area hacker think tank and a collective started in the 90s. Zatko was one of the first to write the Stack Overflow vulnerabilities in the 90s, and he was a fellow member of the Loft and testified in Congress about security vulnerabilities and exploits around the Internet Routing Protocol, PGP. Mudge was also a DARPA researcher and years later left to join Google's Advanced Technologies and Projects group. But you probably remember Mudge from when he and Chris Valasek hacked a Jeep Cherokee cutting into its brakes while driving on a freeway. Mudge is at it again, but this time he wants to point out why commonly used software is insecure. Mudge left Google to start Cyber Independent Testing Lab, a firm that will give you a way to comparison shop browsers, applications, antiviruses, and products according to how hardened they are against attacks, essentially giving you an indicator of security risk. Tactics that they use in the process are static analysis of binaries and code to determine the hygiene of the code, apps not using ASLR or address space layout randomization, and having a non-executable stack and heap. It also analyzes the software use of external libraries and how secure those libraries are. And also it does fuzz testing by throwing lots of data at the software and see if it crashes on hopefully not executing exploits. Mudge wants people and corporations to start caring about security, and he feels by publicizing their exploits, he will get the ball rolling.
Well, the pimp refuses to give police the finger. We knew it was coming, and in this case, a U.S. federal court has ordered a Dallas pimp to use his fingerprint to unlock his iPhone. This case has only recently become unsealed, so it's unclear whether or not law enforcement has acquired the phone's data through other means. The gist is that the law on the topic is unsettled. Only a smattering of legal rulings have involved someone being compelled to use their fingerprints or disclose a password. The Supreme Court has yet to rule on either of the hot-button topics, says the story by Ars Technica. Can we say someone is fishing for a legal precedent?
From tablets to notebooks that we bring into our increasingly BYOD networks to phones and portable devices that power our mobile workforce, a good part of the enterprise runs on lithium-ion batteries. And now Elon Musk wants to make sure that we avoid a future lithium crunch. This week, Tesla invited a select group to tour his partially built Gigafactory in Sparks, Nevada. The sprawling facility will cover 5.8 million square feet, is solar-powered by panels on the roof, heavily automated, yet still employing 6,500 people, and will have a rail system to bring raw materials directly into the plant. The reason for the Gigafactory is simple. With the incredibly popular pre-order Model 3 set to start delivering in 2018, Tesla cars alone would use more lithium-ion chemistry than the entire global supply as of 2013. Musk, ever the shrewd businessman, realized that needing half of the projected 2020 global supply of batteries would put his purchasers in an impossible position. So he partnered with Panasonic to create enough batteries for his cars, Powerwalls, future heavy vehicles, and Panasonic's demands, all while dropping the projected cost per unit by an astonishing 30%. As the enterprise becomes more and more mobile, expect more of our big players to take a page from Tesla if the first Gigafactory succeeds.
Well, it's getting a little easier to take Dropbox into the enterprise. On Wednesday, Dropbox turned the familiar folder from a personal storage container into a communal directory. The company introduced a team folder for Dropbox business users as part of its Admin X initiative to rethink the Dropbox IT admin experience for teams. The team folder includes a fine-grained sharing control that allows administrators to set precise access levels for people inside and outside the organization. It also provides a single, unified view of content that makes sharing and policy settings more straightforward. And the folder includes sync management, which lets administrators specify what content gets synced back to company computers. File event logging has been expanded to include file additions, edits, and deletions, so the result is much more comprehensive audit logs. Dropbox says that the team folder is being rolled out gradually starting Wednesday, and that administrators in the early access program can try it upon request.
IFTTT, or if this then that, is cool, but automating tasks if a particular condition is met. But the average Joes and Janes of the world might have a tough time fully grasping how to make use of it. Many companies have tried to make the automation integration engines more useful by starting their own variants. Microsoft started Flow. There's Zapier, Zuqua, and BYOD. Microsoft's Flow allows you to create connections that wouldn't otherwise exist between apps and other products. In order to gain more adoption, Microsoft has started CAP, or Conditional Action Programming. It lets users type in their tasks in a natural language instead of selecting from conditions and actions. You type your task as if you were giving a verbal command to an assistant. An example of it would be, notify me if the weather will be cold or rainy in the next 24 hours. CAP currently has a web interface and an app and an Android application version, but look out for it to expand and its coverage and make the ease of use go forward.
The EPA is telling U.S. aircraft to clean up their emissions. This last Monday, the EPA set into place a set of new rules that will force U.S. aircraft to curb their emissions of greenhouse gases that they state as endangering public health. The EPA acting administrator for air and radiation is Janet McCabe, and she states that U.S. aircraft are the third biggest source of greenhouse gas from the domestic transportation sector. So while Airbus and Boeing have invested heavily in new technology to save fuel and cut emissions, I'd like to point out that a large number of recycled jet aircraft in third world countries are still running 1970s and 1980s technology. While it would increase aircraft costs from the U.S., perhaps the EPA and FAA need to make that a requirement for any aircraft entering the U.S. airspace.
Well, folks, as it is the 200th episode, we get a bonus blip. Now, it's not a real news story. It's just a reminder. You see, today is also the last day that you can get Windows 10 for free from Microsoft. That means that even if you hate with a passion Windows 10, and you are one of the Never 10 adherents, well, you might want to install it today just so you can roll it back and have the free key ready to go if in the future the product ever meets your demands. Because, folks, who doesn't like free stuff? When we come back, we're going to be jumping into our pre-recorded segment. We've got that interview with Kingston. If you want to know a little bit about the future of ultra-speedy, ultra-fast, and ultra-efficient SSD storage, you're going to want to stay tabbed. But first, let's go ahead and take a moment to thank the sponsor of this episode of This Week in Enterprise Tech. Now, one of the questions that we get asked a lot here on Twite, all of the hosts, I get emails, I get tweets, is, well, how do I get into IT? Now, in my day, it was simple because no one was doing IT yet, so you just had to learn it. You had to jump in. You had to make mistakes. Well, today, the environment is a little bit different, and people want to know. They ask me, should I do an internship? Should I become an apprentice? Should I just start messing around with equipment? Should I take a class? Should I get a certificate? Well, folks, the answer is yes. Yes to all of those things. But thankfully, we have a way to make that process a little bit easier for you. It's called IT Pro TV. Now, IT Pro TV is the best way to keep up to date with your skills or to learn new ones. You see, IT changes daily, and a good IT Pro is constantly learning and staying up to date with current technology certifications. But IT Pro TV's high-quality video tutorials will help you not only keep your IT skills current, but they'll also bring you closer to achieving that new IT job that you've been dreaming about. Over 1,000 hours of content, and they're adding new libraries each and every single week. You can stream their courses live and on demand worldwide to your Chromecast, your Roku, your Amazon Fire, Apple TV, or PC. Plus, you can learn on the go with your mobile device, which means you learn when you want to learn. That helps you to learn better. IT Pro TV is the first IT video provider with courses for sale through Amazon Video Direct. While subscriptions are still the best value, we're excited to see that IT Pro TV's content is available for purchase on Amazon. Now, they also have an extensive library covering everything from CCNA, AWS, ethical hacking, CompTIA Advanced Security, CCNA Security, VCP 6, CEH version 9, CISA, and more. They even include more than 100 step-by-step virtual machine labs and transcender practice exams. That's a $109 value that they give you for free with your subscription because they don't believe in ticky-tack charges. They also offer you a low monthly subscription rate with a no-hassle cancellation policy because they're confident that you're going to find their content compelling, relevant, and continuously useful for your IT life. Now, those transcripts that they offer let you follow from start to finish or jump to any part of a video. Like, for example, if you've got a particular question, you don't have to sit through an entire lesson. You can jump directly to the part of the video that gives you the answer you need. Plus, if you're currently signed up for an enterprise account with an IT Pro TV competitor and they're subjecting you to a rate increase, IT Pro TV will do you a solid by matching your previous year's pricing on that account so that you and your team can learn at an affordable rate. With their client list filled with names like Harvard, MIT, UCSD, and Stanford, and with corporate and group pricing available, Quiet Riot, you really don't have a reason not to try out IT Pro TV. Check out itpro.tv/enterprise to upgrade your brain with the most popular IT certifications on the planet. Premium subscriptions are normally $57 a month or $570 per year, but because they love the Quiet Riot and because they're fans of Twit, we've got a special offer. Try it free, for nothing, gratis, for 7 days when you sign up using our code ENTERPRISE30 to check out their courses, live stream, and more. You'll also receive 30% off the lifetime of your account. That's less than $40 per month or $399 for the entire year. That's itpro.tv/enterprise, itpro.tv/enterprise, and use the code ENTERPRISE30 to try it free for 7 days and save 30% off your account. And we thank IT Pro TV for their support of This Week in Enterprise Tech. Well, in a bit, we're going to start the celebration of our 200th episode. That's right. We've got some special guests, and we've got cake for you all. Kind of virtual. You know how this works through the stream. But before that, let's go ahead and take a look at Kingston's view of the future of SSDs in the data center.
Hi, I'm David Leong with Kingston Technology, and I work in the Public Relations Department.
And I'm Cameron Crandall. I work on the SSD product engineering team.
And we have a couple of new upcoming products for on the enterprise side. We have a couple of SSDs that we want to talk about today. I see here that we have one SATA-based SSD and one PCIe.
Correct.
SSD. So if we can start with the SATA SSD, I believe it's called our DC400.
Correct. Data Center 400.
So obviously it's for data center drives.
Yeah. So it's really specifically targeted at the server data center application use. It's going to be offered in 400 gig up to 1.8 terabytes. So we'll be able to break the one terabyte mark. And be able to offer high performance, high density storage to our customers.
I run an SSD on my work laptop. I have one on my computer at home. Why is this different than, say, my regular client SSD that I bought off the shelf?
We've been selling client-based SSDs to our server customers for years, and SSDs are so much faster than a hard drive that the performance gains initially were really mind-blowing, right? And you were able to just do so much more with less. Now what we're finding is these storage professionals are getting a little bit more sophisticated, and they are kind of peeling back the onion a bit on the SSD, and they're looking for performance and consistency in the SSDs that they buy. And primarily what they're looking at is latency consistency and IOPS consistency. What we have with client-based drives is, even though they're really, really fast, under a server workload, we can see dips in IOPS performance or spikes in latency, which translate to a lag at the application front end. So storage architects today and IT professionals that are more sophisticated are now doing their own testing, and they're throwing very, very heavy workloads at SSDs and studying the latency profiles and the IOPS profiles to see if there's any outliers in performance on the drives that they're purchasing. So the DC400 is designed for really performance consistency for IOPS and for latency. So we don't see it in a client-based machine. I mean, you and I working on our computers during the day, if the SSD has to do some background operations and it slows down, it has plenty of idle time to do that. In a server application where it's operating 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 100% duty cycle. The SSD at some point has to do its background operations, and that's when you're going to see that dip in performance. But an SSD can be designed to minimize the effects of those dips in performance, and that's what we've done with the DC400.
So what type of customer is looking for a SATA-based data center SSD?
Actually, most data centers are still deploying, front-loading SATA and SAS-based SSDs. It's the traditional storage model. It's a model that customers are very, very comfortable with, and they want to stick with it. And it's low cost. There is a cost factor here. And if you look at hyperscale companies that are deploying, thousands of servers over the course of a month or just ongoing, the hyperscale definitely is typically an environment where servers are being deployed almost at a constant rate. And they've identified that, low-cost serial ATA drives fit that model really well from a cost standpoint. I mean, basically the server is a serviceable unit in itself. That's one example. You still see a lot of, 8 and 16 bay, server chassis with front-loading SSDs in the front of them. That's an ideal application. Mirrored boot drives are still common. We kind of live in the age of virtualization now and software-defined storage. So we've got some different storage architectures out there, but the mainstream market still likes front-loading. Walk up to the front of the server and being able to service that SSD. So if you look at the stats from the analysts in the market, 2.5-inch serial ATA devices still make up the majority of the enterprise storage SSD use.
Because we're coming out with higher capacities, and as you said before, we broke the terabyte barrier, this is obviously telling us that companies are actually moving away from traditional HDD for storage and maybe server on the top, SSD on the top level, to, is it like all flash-based storage now?
It doesn't really make sense to use 15K SAS when SSDs are either at parity or less expensive than 15K SAS, and they perform much faster. And going back to the latency discussion we were having, if you look at the latency profile of a 15K SAS drive versus a drive like a DC400, the performance is staggering. I mean, it just does not make sense to use spindle disks for performance.
So we know where the limitations are with SATA 3. We know about IOPS and latency limitations. For companies that need customers who need performance beyond the SATA bus, we actually have our EP1000 drive here, right?
Correct.
EP is enterprise PCIe?
Exactly. Yeah. So PCIe has been coming about over the last couple of years. There's a driver called NVMe, which is going to enable great things in terms of performance and low latency for PCI Express attached SSDs. And yeah, we're going to be coming out with our EP1000 in October. This is a PCI Express NVMe drive. So NVMe means it's going to use native drivers that come with your operating system. And it's going to be low cost, right? And I think, what we've seen over the last several years in this space is a lot of proprietary designs that have been very, very expensive, that have really only appealed to kind of a small set of customers that can afford that type of technology. NVMe is going to bring standardization to how we attach SSDs to the PCI Express bus, which is going to bring the cost down. And that's what we're aiming at with EP1000. So EP1000 will be offered in 1 terabyte, 2 terabyte, and 4 terabyte. Don't know exactly what the pricing is quite yet, but it'll be somewhere right around $1 per gig, maybe a little bit less. But the goal with EP1000 is to be able to bring low-cost NVMe PCI Express storage to the PCI Express slot.
So we're essentially taking components that are available now and putting them on a single card?
Correct. Yeah. If you look at NVMe today, we lack a lot of system support to be able to plug these into servers. So we've got 2.5-inch PCI Express today, but we don't have a lot of backplanes to plug those into. Mm-hmm. And then we have the M.2 form factor in NVMe as well, which we don't have sockets to plug into. So actually with the EP1000 design, underneath the heatsink that we see here, we actually have 4 M.2 PCI Express SSDs connected through a PCI Express switch, which enables us to connect to a single Gen 3x8 PCI Express connector on the motherboard. So effectively, I'm bringing 4 M.2 NVMe devices to a single PCI Express socket inside the server.
Who needs that much performance and that much storage? So
we can get a lot of performance out of this device. So NVMe enables, about 2,400 to 2,500 megabytes per second. So if we compare that to serial ATA at 500 megabytes per second per device, it's many times over the performance. And now that we're closer to the processor with PCI Express, our latency goes way down. Again, we keep coming back to latency in our conversation here, and that is really critical to database applications. And NVMe gives us not only greater bandwidth performance, but also lower latency and higher IOPS performance. Generally speaking, the customers that like to use these are running part or all of their databases on a single card. So what they might have been doing with an array of maybe SATA SSDs in the past, we can bring that same amount of performance down to a single PCI Express slot inside the server.
So it's basically 4x the performance over SATA per lane. Well, there's 4 drives in there.
There's 4 drives, yeah. So in a sense, it's actually many times over the performance of serial ATA. But it's about, as kind of a general rule of thumb, it's about 2,500 megabytes a second per device with NVMe versus 500 megabytes a second with a SATA SSD.
That is fast.
Yep. Yeah.
So EP1000 and DC400 are going to be our enterprise offerings. We should probably look for those perhaps Q3 this year, Q4.
So DC400 is slated to launch the first week of September, and EP1000 will be an October launch for us.
And I think we're already sampling with customers, aren't we, on this?
We are, with both drives. Yep. And so far, the feedback has been fantastic.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Cheebert, I want to get your take on this. One of the things that we discussed was PCIe attached storage is wonderfully fast, fantastically fast, but there's a limited number of lanes that we have in traditional architecture, and which is why they've introduced that switching device. The new switching fabric allows them to connect hundreds, if not thousands, of ultra high-speed PCIe connected SSDs with almost zero latency. That, for me, that is the most interesting. But then you put that against something else that they said, which is when they look at their customers and what their customers want, most of their customers, even though they are absolutely enamored by the speeds of PCIe connected devices, they still want the portability of front of rack, slide in and slide out. Is that going to change at any time in the near future?
I gotta imagine it's gotta change. One of the things that they didn't talk about that needs to be raised is cooling. When you have these slide-in front of rack drive arrays, they are designed to move air from the front of the rack to the back of the rack and get rid of the heat. And solid-state drives still make heat. And if you start packing them really, really close together, who knows what's going to happen to that?
Right.
So the reality is I think it's going to be cooling. And keep in mind, there is still a heck of a lot of data centers out there that cannot get up over, say, 7 or 9 kW of power and cooling per rack. A lot of people are starting to have to redesign their data centers in order to be able to handle additional power density.
Right. And Curtis, let me get your take on this. We've seen enterprise drives become very popular with those who are building a one-off or a multiple-off, maybe 100-off system that goes into an enterprise network. But when it comes down to the data center, I'm still seeing the purchase pattern of buying fast but really cheap SSDs and then just swapping them out every 6 months. And again, this is the whole idea of like what Google did when in their early data centers of let's buy commodity hardware for a low price and just assume it's going to fail in the near future. Do you see a switch, and do you see a financial incentive to switch to we're not going to buy as many drives, but we're going to buy drives that last longer and that will become more efficient that way?
I think what we're seeing is that the enterprise is getting very good at deciding what their use case is. And where we're going to see the reliance on much more reliable, more high-speed SSDs is in applications where they're doing things like hyper-converged architectures, where you have the servers acting as the software front ends for the storage, everything in a single rack, everything dedicated to either an application or a body of applications, and things looked at as a more or less discrete computing unit. I think where we're talking about big data lakes, when we're talking about large data stores for the enterprise, we're seeing people still doing tiering with essentially commodity units. And some of that tiering is still with spinning magnetic disks. Some is with commodity low-cost SSDs. So is the reliance on the higher quality enterprise drives going up? Yes, but in very specific instances for very specific purposes.
Right. Lou, let me get you into the discussion here, because you can give us a specific use case. We're talking in general about data centers and about how you need to map out exactly what kind of performance your data center might need. Your division of Microsoft, again, one of the most profitable divisions that Microsoft currently has, is CRM. And CRM's feeding out a lot of customer information. Where would you stand on moving everything over to an all-flash storage array versus some sort of tiered hybrid solution?
I mean, it all depends on the software they're using. I mean, for CRM, you know, if you need high performance storage, like for instance, if you're doing search or if you're doing large amounts of integration between different systems, then I'd say you're going to need faster storage at the back end. And a lot of hard, like Curtis pointed out, you know, storage is becoming, you know, lots of services out there becoming and making these logical layers on top of storage, and it's making it easier for people to choose whether it's premium storage, SSD backed, or legacy, just the legacy backed stuff. But, you know, a lot of things are now being chosen around, hey, do I need storage that's compliant and SOX compliance and all this stuff as I store data in the cloud? It's auditable. Can I encrypt it? That kind of thing. But for us, perspective-wise, you know, it's all dependent on the subsystem within your software systems. That if you need the speed, you know, sometimes you choose this premium disk-based service.
Right. Chee, let me give you one last question before we introduce our guest, because I do want to get on to the partying. I mean, free cake, who doesn't want that? But one of the things that actually just came up in the chat room, I think it was from Specs, asking about what this means for the future of offline or nearline storage, things like optical storage or tape storage. Will the move to super fast, super large all-flash storage arrays kill the much slower archival storage options?
No, I don't think so. You know, when you start talking about offline, the big issue with that is being able to take it offline and store vast amounts of archival data someplace, whether it's for compliance, whether it's for just paranoia, whatever. I'm still trying to go and buy a Blu-ray jukebox, especially since they're up to 100 gig per platter now, dual side, dual layer. It's still more cost effective for me to store cartridges of, say, like 35 Blu-rays off on a shelf or in a safe or something like that. A lot of people that have compliance issues, finance, legal, and so forth, they need a way of getting this off someplace that is easy to remove, easy to lock up, and easy to keep away from the hackers. And so, especially for compliance, I'm still seeing offline and nearline storage being a very big deal. And I don't think at the cost of SSDs is going to change that anytime soon.
It's interesting that you say that, because that's not the first time I've heard that. In fact, that's not even the 50th time I've heard that. Storage experts who I've spoken with, most of them are in favor of keeping a tiered system. They like the idea that a particular technology almost demands to be offline. Because if you've got a flash array, the temptation is just to keep adding storage, and you keep everything online because it's super fast and you have access to everything. But storage experts will tell you, look, there's some data that should not be online. There's some data that should not be quickly accessed, that should be able to get locked away. And when you have a media like, say, optical or tape, it does require you to actually think about how you're archiving it, where you're storing it, and how you're taking care of it over the years. What is your storage recycling, deletion / recovery options in your business plan? So, yeah, I think we're going to keep having a job here. I don't think storage options are going away. Well, gentlemen, that's more or less the business part of this episode, but we now have to get to the party part. And Kevin, if you could go to the wide shot here, I need to show you what our 200th episode looks like. You see, not only do we have Tim Titus of PathSolutions, not only do we have Cricket Liu of Infoblox, our IPv6 guru, but we've got a cake. Because what 200th birthday party, actually, I guess it's not a birthday, what 200th episode would be complete without chocolate cake? Gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us.
Of course, you're welcome.
Now, there are some people who maybe didn't watch your respective episodes. If you could introduce yourself, Tim, with PathSolutions, can you remind them what is PathSolutions?
So I founded this company to end up doing root cause troubleshooting in plain English of network glitches. So if you have any sort of glitch or problem, or user comes up to you and says, gee, 2 hours ago I had a problem, I figured all of the software wouldn't solve that problem. And I figured there needed to be a way to look back in time on the entire infrastructure to say, here's what glitch that caused that problem.
Exactly. And one of the things that we loved seeing at Interrupt, Cheebert and I, is the fact that you were installing and finding everything on your network within the first 3 minutes.
Yeah, in one sense, it's good and bad. It's good, the fact that it's a little embarrassing, the fact that very quickly we're going to say, hey, you misconfigured that interface. Hey, you've got a bad cable over there. But on the other hand, with how short that show is, you've got to get things fixed within the first hours of the first day. Otherwise, it's not going to work.
Yeah, at a show that only runs 3 or 4 days, there's no such thing as we'll get to it next week.
Yeah.
Yeah. Of course, we've got Cricket Liu. We've had Cricket on, what, it's got to be 4, 5 times. You've been on
Tim asked,
lot.
I think it was 3 or 4 times.
Yeah, exactly, because we bring you in anytime we want an IPv6 update. And actually, you've brought in some big hitters for us from Aaron. You're with Infoblox, which has been traditionally known as, that's the DNS company. That's the company that helps me figure out exactly where everything gets routed. Mm-hmm. But more recently, over the last few years, you've really become one of the main voices pushing for real IPv6 adoption.
Yeah, I think that was something that it needed a push. I'm not sure I was the person to give it a push. I actually have a team of people I work with at Infoblox who are kind of the standard bearers for us. For IPv6 evangelism, but it's still within my remit. Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, gentlemen, we brought you in here because, well, it's our 200th episode, and we thought we'd love to get an overview, or your view of what the future of our field holds. This is something that our audience is always asking about. This is something that me and the other hosts are always talking about. So we wanted to get some fresh blood, some fresh ideas. Let me start it off, and either of you can answer this. In your opinion, what is the top, or say the top 3 changes in IT over the last decade? What are the 3 things that you believe have really changed the course of the industry that we work in? Who wants to go first?
I've got something.
Go.
Okay. I think that 10 years puts us back to what, almost August of 2016, 2006. And 2007 was the introduction of the iPhone.
Right.
And I think that you can't look at the last 10 years of history within IT and not count the introduction of the iPhone as being a pivotal, seminal event. Not necessarily because it meant, hey, we've got a better, more reliable mobile device, but because it brought so much with it. The rise of pervasive, high-speed mobile data. It drove Wi-Fi. It drove basically. If you look around any modern office nowadays, you see tons and tons of mobile devices. There's no question in most organizations nowadays that people are going to bring their own devices in, or the company's going to provide them. They're ubiquitous now.
And people don't remember 10 years ago, if you had a mobile device and you were using it in the enterprise, it was a BlackBerry.
Yeah,
absolutely, 100%
The
was
thing is, though, is you only had access to email through that BlackBerry, and the whole thing that the iPhone did is it moved it forward so that you had access to the world with that iPhone.
Yes.
I remember a day when I was actually one of the people who got one of the very first iPhones, waited in line, And the very next day, I ended up going to a museum, and I was standing in front of this clavichord, and I'm like, what the heck is the difference between a clavichord and a harpsichord? I didn't know.
Right.
Boom. Out I pull, Wikipedia, I have the answer.
Yeah.
And I thought, my world has changed because I have access to that information from my pocket, and nobody has ever gone back.
Did you get it at launch?
Yes.
Yeah, so did I. So did I. I was there day of. Yes.
I actually had one before lunch. Which is actually why I am on the Apple blacklist.
Oh, dear.
I don't get that anymore.
Oh.
Because
Yes,
I
but
did not kiss the butt.
Yes. But Padre, did you get your BlackBerry with the crypto module?
No, I've never had a BlackBerry. Never.
Oh.
Never, ever.
Yes, I had a BlackBerry for many years with a giant battery pack on it for the crypto module.
I mean, I would love a crypto module, though. I wish someone made... Actually, no, I take that back. There is a crypto module out there right now. We saw it at Barcelona. It was a company called XXXL. And all it is essentially it's a dongle for a phone where anything, any communication, any data transfer gets automatically encrypted end-to-end, which is kind of cool. Cheebert, actually, let me bring you in on this because I get asked a lot about BYOD. BYOD, we just take it for granted now. But when we started Twiet 200 episodes ago, BYOD was still sort of it's an uncertain thing. It was a trend. People were starting to think, well, I think we need this in the enterprise. And they want to know where it started. And I always say it started with the iPhone. And they say, well, but we had the BlackBerry before the iPhone. I think what you talked about, the fact that I could get more than just my email, that's really what established the BYOD part, where people were saying, this is a personal device that does so much for me that I need to connect it to the enterprise.
Okay, but we had BYOD many years before that, where you'd have an employee come into a company and go up to the IT guys and say, hey, I have my own personal laptop. And people would go, ooh, you have a laptop? You have a portable computing device? And you say, I want to use this on the LAN. And all of a sudden, the IT departments are like struggling to wonder, what do we do with this? And they had to learn how to overcome that and say, yes, here's the policy. Here's how we're going to get this portable device on the LAN. It's just that that's been forgotten about as we end up coming to the next iteration of I now have my own portable device that is my phone or my iPad or otherwise. And IT departments have to relearn that again of how do you deal with this? You can't just say no because you're limiting the business functionality of the user, not just the application, but the user is now being hindered.
And I think that the BlackBerries, I had a BlackBerry for a while, back when a BlackBerry was basically a glorified bidirectional pager. And it was kind of a no-op as far as the IT organization was concerned because it wasn't on our network.
Right.
It was just using an ESMR network or something or other that would support bidirectional paging, except it was sending email over it. And because somebody didn't need to worry about it, if you had it on your hip, you weren't going to be on their network. You weren't going to potentially subject something on their network to attack. It didn't matter.
Yeah. Cheebert, what about you? When would you say BYOD really started?
Well, I'd love to say the BlackBerry, but I can't because in order to integrate that into the enterprise, you had to have the BlackBerry Enterprise server to really link it in. My personal opinion is I really think it was the iPhone. You know, as much as I hate to say that, I think it is.
Yep.
I'm the same way. And actually, Curtis, let me get you in here before we yell at Lou because his company is at fault for this. But I remember this about my first iPhone experience because I was in DC and I was setting up Exchange and everything. And iPhone worked out of the box with Exchange. Was very happy, no problem. And then I started setting up some Windows mobile devices, and it was a freaking nightmare because it did not work out of the box. You actually had to buy separate licensing, not only separate licensing, but you had to buy a separate server that interfaced with Exchange, then would interface with the Windows Phone. And it was one of these things where it's like, do you not get it? I mean, people want to use their mobile devices. Do you remember that debacle? Did you have anything to do with bringing out the truth of iPhone in the enterprise?
Well, you know, the thing, here's what happened in my recollection of what I covered back then. Yes, it was the iPhone, and later it just kicked into overdrive with the iPad, only partially because they were easy to set up. The other thing is who was bringing them into the enterprise. These were devices that were brought in by the executives. And every CIO will tell you, that when the CEO comes in with a mobile phone, with a tablet, and says, I need this to work, well, you make it work. And because it was the executives bringing in these devices, all of a sudden, policies were changed and systems were built to integrate the iDevices into the network. Once it spread, it became something that just snowballed. And Apple did one thing that was really super. They so tightly controlled their operating systems and the operating system releases that IT folks had a pretty good idea that if they developed a system that would support one particular version of iOS, then 99.9% of all the devices that came in would be supported. That's been the big downfall of Android, because you can't simply support Android. You've got to support 4,962 versions of Android, or you just say that iPhone is the way to go.
Right. Lou, I'm not letting you off the hook, because I know that it's not your division that did any of this, but still, it's your company, and they did a bad thing, and you should feel bad. But Matt S. in the chat room points out, and this is what I love, because I had a Pocket PC phone, and it worked perfectly with Exchange. I used it. In fact, I had that same phone from like 2002 to 2006, I think. And then I got a Windows Mobile phone, and I figured, oh, all the same things are going to work, and then it didn't work with Exchange Server. What was happening in the background that let that occur?
It's, you know, it's always good to reflect. That's how we improve, right? So I think Windows Mobile was terrible when it connected to Exchange. I think the major issues was around protocol enhancements. I think Exchange supported RPC over HTTP, and that wasn't necessarily good in the Windows Mobile operating system at the time. I think 6 and 7 were having issues with that. And then ActiveSync kind of came into play, and then the people were using EWS, and then now we have the new MAPI over HTTP. So I think the problem, though, at that time was just that the full support of that protocol, RPC over HTTP, was not necessarily supported 100%. But they improved it. You know, once it became Windows Phone branded and it became the Windows kernel and they started supporting more protocols out of the box, it became a lot easier. So now to me, I think Windows Phone does connect up to Exchange a lot easier than even iPhone today. But doesn't mean they have the better clients at this point. But yeah, that to me that was a kind of a major issue at that time.
It strikes me as that's such a moment of opportunity, not just missed, but opportunity deliberately destroyed. That switch from, okay, we had Windows Pocket PC, Windows CE, then Windows Mobile, Windows Phone Mobile, Windows 10, and and in that, it was always, why is there no consistency here? Shouldn't the OS be getting better as you iterate it, not
They ended up just
features?
being a whole bunch of unloved children along the way.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I have 3 different Windows devices that could have been great that were all orphaned. Every single one of them. And it always felt as if, okay, there's been a change in the upper echelon. Someone doesn't like the way they were going, and so they just abandoned an entire line. And, you know, you could only do that a dozen times to someone before they stop coming back to you.
Well, we don't have to dwell on Microsoft anymore. You could look at Palm, for example.
Yeah.
I mean, I own various Palm devices before the iPhone came out.
The market. That is a heartbreaker.
Yeah.
I loved Palm. I slept with it. It was one of those things.
Trail
where
was great.
Yeah.
It was, but the syncing was so unreliable. I can't tell you how many times I had Trio. I don't remember which one it was, like a 270 or something. I have to say also physical build quality on that was terrible.
Yes.
It was just really cheesy, light plastic. And every so often some sync would fail and I would lose everything.
My first Palm Trio was the first phone and only smartphone I've ever had where me just squeezing it actually destroyed the phone. Oh my God. Like, whoa, what did I just do?
But the earliest Palms, though, were the very first that actually successfully synchronized. You'd put it in the little docking cradle, press the button, it would synchronize, and you'd be happy because it's like, oh, this is the first product that actually does what it says it's supposed to do, which is why they started to dominate in that, was it a handheld PDA?
Right.
Well, do you remember that first moment, that first time, and I'm going to throw this to my co-host too, the first device you had that actually synced? It might have been a clumsy sync, but it was the first time we're like, oh, wait, I don't have to re-enter all my contacts. I plug it in, and it just takes it from my computer. For me, it had to be I mean, it might have been one of the free Palms I got at one of these conferences, but the one that I really remember was when Handspring was doing it. It was the Palm offshoot after some people left. Chee, what was your first device that synced, and did you think it was magic?
Actually, I had a prototype AT&T brick. I think it was like that big. It actually had a resistive touchscreen. I had to use a stylus.
Right, of course.
But I could actually get it to grab data off my Windows 3.11 machine, and it worked about 50% of the time.
Oh, wait, no, I'm sorry. I was wrong. I remember my first syncing device. It was a Casio watch that you held up to it had to be a CRT monitor.
I still have that
and you
watch.
click it, and the screen would blink, and it would sync its data into the watch.
Wow.
That had to be
You have
slow.
one too, right?
That
it
had
was
to be
crazy.
ridiculous. Even if you moved it, I'm sure.
Oh, that's right. You have mine.
It's still sitting on my shelf. You want it for your museum?
That thing will be worth money in a few centuries. Yeah. But actually, it doesn't work anymore because you do need a CRT. It won't work on an LCD anymore.
Dredge one of those up from a graveyard somewhere.
I know. Lou, what about you? What was your first syncing device?
The compact iPac.
Oh, yes. I love those.
Yeah.
Because they had all the cradles. You could you could add Wi-Fi. You could add full-size PCMCIA. Oh, that was nice.
Oh, man, I had Linux on my iPacs.
Wait, they had... was that
pods.
custom, or did they actually offer that?
No, I customized it. That's what all my pods were based on, my environmental monitoring systems.
Right. Curtis?
That was long before the Raspberry Pi.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. What about you, Curtis? What was your first sync?
I'm trying to remember because I had a couple of prototype Raspberry Pis back when they sold two versions of that. They sold one that actually was a little pager-sized device, and then they sold one that was, basically the same size as a Palm Pilot. So I had both of those along with the BlackBerry email and network account that you had to have in order to get them to sync and to receive. But I also had the original Palm Pilot and then later the Palm Pilot 5 that I loved dearly. And I tell you, one of the reasons I love them so much, especially with the 5, which I got when I gave a speech for a Palm executive group and won it playing golf with a VP of some sort. The Franklin Planner folks out of Utah had a special version of the Franklin Planner and their Franklin software that ran on your PC and synchronized with the Palm. And I had used the Franklin Planner paper product. And once that synced, that was just the very best thing ever. And I think I finally got rid of all that hardware about 18 months ago in a purge. Yeah. But that was just stupendous stuff.
Didn't that Franklin, it had like a DB9 serial connector, and it had it almost looked like a headphone jack on the other side, right?
Absolutely, it did indeed.
Oh, wait. Does anyone remember it was the dying days of Palm? And they actually created like a tablet that never got released. They had manufactured them, and then they decided not to release them, and that was basically the death of the company. Do you remember what the name of that thing was?
I don't. It's vaguely familiar, but
this was before.
Didn't it have some elephant name? It was something like that. It was some animal name that elephant comes to my mind for some reason.
T-Bird, Curtis, Lou, do you remember?
Forget.
I think that was their marketing idea.
I remember having a 3G sled for my Palm 5.
Oh, well, wow. Really?
Yeah.
They had those back then?
You bet.
I remember these little springboards I could get from my handspring, which I never actually got because they were way too expensive.
It actually docked in there and it would block.
Dock and lock.
You raised the little antenna, and I was able to do email from just about anywhere, and it was a very, very sweet device.
Okay, well, gentlemen,
Andre,
I'm sorry.
I was just on Google while we were talking and looked it up, and the last thing that I found is that there was indeed a tablet, but that came about after HP bought Palm, so in 2011.
Right.
Prototype that they were showing around, but while they showed it to a lot of folks, they never did release it.
I was always hoping that they would dump it off into the channel somewhere and I'd be able to pick one up, and I never did.
I think that was the one that had. Was that the one that had the card-oriented OS?
Yes.
I think that was.
It was like the Palm Pre.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, so sad. Well, gentlemen, we've been talking about syncing and how long it's been around, but it sounds as if we could say if we talked about the top game changer, it has to be BYOD. In the last 10 years, there's nothing that's affected it like bringing in.
Yes and no. Yes and no.
Really? So what's the no?
Okay, so cloud computing has been something that is on at top of everyone's mind, but I would argue that the problem with cloud computing is that years previously, everyone remember Web 2.0?
Yeah.
Everyone remember Application Service Provider? It was under a number of different names all the way along, and I'd say now, finally, cloud computing is actually starting to deliver. Now, that in combination with BYOD creates just a two-fist punch that you just can't.
That's the thing. BYOD really only works in a cloud environment.
Exactly.
Right, exactly. It motivates that because all of a sudden you've got mobile devices where you haven't got a lot of local storage, you haven't got a lot of local compute, so you rely on stuff that's in the cloud.
Yeah.
Right. It's the only solution.
What about it, Cheebert? Can you have one without the other? Is this chocolate and peanut butter?
Oh, no, dude. BYOD, there's no way you're going to be, well, at least for now, unless we come up with some weird magic, you're not going to have enough computing power to do any kind of real natural language or anything on a mobile device without a cloud. And the problem is people keep forgetting the laws of physics. If you have to reach out to a cloud server from Paris to Sunnyvale, your performance is going to stink and it's not going to work. So you need globally load balance. I personally think the next iterative change is when we start having much more mobile devices all on IPv6, thank you, Cricket, and we're going to have globally load balanced computing facilities because things like augmented reality isn't going to happen without cloud, natural language. I'm sure everybody's heard about those Babelfish-like things that you stick in the ear that does live translation. That all requires a hellacious amount of computing power, and that's really only going to be practical in the cloud.
Absolutely. Lou, what about it? I mean, cloud, BYOD, those are actually two very, very good choices for the last decade, but can we break down cloud a bit more than just calling it cloud?
Absolutely. I think for me, game changers, like they were saying, is it's just started to get to be useful is like IaaS in the cloud, being able to build your infrastructure, moving your on-premise infrastructure into the cloud and be able to build it out efficiently and having express routes in between them and be able to be cross-regional and be able to support globally and all this stuff. These are things that, for me, especially enterprise game changers. And now they're also offering, express routes and on-premise and online support. And so these things alone are bringing, making devices more useful. And then you add on the top of those, these other services like, Azure ML is a perfect example, machine learning, where now you put all your data in the cloud somewhere, some storage, some data lake, some data warehouse, and then they, drop analytics on top of it. Now you're producing useful information that you could be used from, data coming from IoT devices, data coming from mobile devices, data coming from customers, from cash registers, whatever you want. And now you're producing useful, game-changing information and data for your business. I think all these things combined are what's useful about the cloud today and where the cloud's going, I think.
I wish the audience could see the preview screen that we see here, because I've got Cheebert's holding up some sort of device that he really wants us to see, and Curtis was like inhaling his phone. I'm not exactly sure what's going on here. Cheebert, what is it that you're trying to show us?
So this is the Amazon Dash button that's non-product specific. It's designed to link to AWS. Cool. It just arrived yesterday.
I want that to reboot any instance I have it running in AWS. That was easy. All right, Curtis, you get the last say on looking back into the past, your take on the most important things in the last 10 years.
Okay, so first, what I was doing was taking a photograph of my my little bit of the world while I'm doing this. That's what the Swamp Studio looks like. But I'm going to do is a variation on BYOD, because I think if you expand it to consumerization of enterprise IT, what we saw was that the enterprise workstations, the enterprise endpoints had become very conservative and driven more by cost than anything else. And what people found, what employees found, was that the laptops, the desktops, the mobile phones that they were using in their personal lives were far more powerful and more capable than what they were being given in the enterprise. Once they saw that, and as they were being pushed to be more productive, they demanded that they be able to use the best tools for the job. That drove the BYOD, and it also drove what workstations, laptops, and enterprise tablets looked like. And so I would say that BYOD and consumerization of enterprise IT walk hand in hand in terms of the most impressive and influential trends that we've seen in the past few years.
All right, gentlemen, thank you very much. That was a nice look back. A couple of giggles there, remembering old technology. Now let's go the other way. If someone was going to come to you from the Twilight Right and say, what's the thing we can't see? What's the trend that we need to spot? What are the little bits and pieces that are going to be Twilight Right fodder in 3, 4, 5 years when we get to episode, whatever that would be, 400, 500 or so? Who wants to go first?
So in one sense, the look back gives us kind of a clarity to be able to look forward, is that incredible automation. You look at the things that are really becoming popular now, where you have had VMware's virtual machines for a number of years, and now we're getting Docker, where you can just say, okay, snap your fingers and an application comes into an existence. You can do that in the cloud, you can do that locally, wherever you want. And the thought, I remember the days when you'd spend an entire day building a server. That doesn't happen anymore. Yeah. An entire day building and configuring an application. Nobody has time for that. Ain't nobody got time for that. So
now you got to do it with that. Ain't nobody got time for that.
Sorry. Thank you. So it's that sort of mode of extreme automation where you say, okay, we're going to need a data feed going from our Amazon into our Microsoft cloud to be able to connect all of this stuff, because I want to be able to run some big data analysis on this. And you don't have to do any of it. You just effectively make the directives to have these things happen, and the connections will be made automatically.
Yeah, I mean, that part of automation is spectacular. And that is relatively new, because I remember when I was still actively working, just imaging workstations and having clean installations of servers that I could clone onto drives. That was a huge time saver.
Oh, and cloning was great.
It was great. Mm-hmm. But if I can say, hey, you know what? I want 12 instances of this, and I need it geolocated across the planet, and I can do it in under a minute. That's incredible.
Right. And you can do that now with your servers. Yeah. The question is doing that with the applications, which again, I think why Docker is becoming so incredibly powerful, is being able to do the same thing with applications. And we're going to get to the point where I don't think it makes as much of a difference as to what application you choose. It's how do those applications connect with other applications for their data feeds. Because the application is only as valid as the data that it actually analyzes.
Let's talk about that, because that idea of spinning something up really fast for a particular application, does that mean Docker? Does that containers? Does that mean virtual machines? Or does that mean some sort of hybrid of the two?
I think at this point, the preponderance of evidence is with containers.
Okay.
I think whether it's Docker or some other container technology.
VMware hates you right now.
Yeah, I know they hate me. They're a great customer of ours. I love them, but of course they're investing in containers too.
Yes, they are. Yes.
I think containers really change the way that you do system administration. It's been a long time since I was a system administrator, but boy, we used to spend just an incredible amount of effort tuning one Unix server. Yeah. Recompiling the kernel, making sure just ridiculous amounts of time to do that. And nowadays, forget it. Destroy it, spin another one up. You want 100 more of those? Fine.
I remember doing a couple of those installations where I'm looking at this going, I know it's going to take me forever to rebuild this, but I don't want to troubleshoot this.
Yeah.
I'm going to junk it. And yeah, that was 20 hours of work. Now it could be, oh, you know what? kill that instance, open up this new container, I'm good.
Exactly. It's faster sometimes to spin up a new instance of something rather than reconfiguring it. Just destroy the old one, spin up a new one.
Cheebert, what about it? Is the container virtualized machine war over?
No, not by a long shot. I think it's just heating up. Docker has basically created an entire industry, and everybody else is playing catch up. I was just recently at Cisco Live, actually talking in Tim's booth, and all I heard in the DevOps section of Cisco Live was microservices. Nobody wants to pay for the huge amount of overhead of maintaining full virtual machines anymore. And the idea of microservices, being able to write and containerize your apps and throw it into the cloud, is going to be, I think, the next big game changer. And I think it is going to be the key to Internet of Things actually finally taking off in the enterprise.
Lou, what about that? I mean, your company is very invested in this battle, and they support both containers and virtualized machines. Is this microservice battle going to lead us to a place where one is going to have supremacy over the other, or do you think these two coexist into the near future?
Yeah, I think they definitely do coexist, and because it all depends on the type of app or development or progression you're trying to build. For containers, using Docker Swarm and so on, you're doing it for a particular type of industry, potentially different type of implementation. I think just like Cheebert said, just software microservices in general, and then the composition of those microservices. How are you building those together? Whether you're using, websites or blob storage or something. How are you composing these services together to make these web microservices work for you and your particular scenario, right? So I think Docker, these types of container type services will come into fruition and they will become useful for particular scenarios, but I don't think that it's going to overtake just the general sense microservices where PaaS services kind of composed together will really be overtaken.
And Lou, I want to get, I'm going to go over to Curtis. Curtis, I want to get your unique executive level view again, because we always have to defer to you for this. Engineers will argue back and forth about which approach do you use. Do you use a container? Do you use a virtual machine? How are you going to spin up your microservices? But for an executive for whom all of that is just gobbledygook, it's gibberish, what are the important factors to them? Is it just, I need to be able to spin up cheaply, I need to be able to spin up globally, I need to be able to have a lot of fault tolerance, high availability? What are the buzzwords that listeners to our programs, when they're approaching their execs for budgetary demands, should know to convince them that they need to invest one way or another?
Well, I think it depends largely on exactly which executives we're talking about. If we're talking about executives within the IT structure, then the microservices and containers are the way to go, largely because they're offering services that can be integrated into a hybrid cloud infrastructure. And what we know from every study that's been done is that hybrid cloud infrastructures are the way to go. People are within the IT departments rolling their own as they pick and choose from different services, from a combination of public and private clouds, and even public and private clouds and on-premise work. The infrastructures are complex, and people want individual services that they can spin up, spin down, change, modify, and integrate rapidly and completely. Now, when I said the type of executive, we have to remember that a lot of IT services are being purchased by what's called shadow IT. That's the director of marketing, the director of sales, even the director of HR or accounting going out and going around traditional IT to buy their own IT services. Those folks, those executives are buying complete software as a service, SaaS type solutions, because they don't want to integrate. They don't want to pay to integrate. They want some solution that they can put on their card, slide through on their expense account, and not have to worry about telling anyone else about. As well, larger companies are taking more complex routes, building more complex applications. Smaller companies, smaller enterprises tend to want complete solutions, at least at the beginning. And so I think it's great that there are all of these different options that executives of different sorts and in different sorts of companies can choose from to get the solution that's best for them and their organization.
Well, gentlemen, we are way over time, but I do want to give our guests who traveled all the way up here one last gasp here to talk about, if you were an IT manager, what is the trend that you want to keep your eye on? Of course, there's containers, there's VMs, there's microservices, but what else? What would be the bit of wisdom that you would want to offer down to the Twilight Riot as to what's going to hit them from a blind side?
I don't know if it hit people from a blind side, but I'm really excited to see eventually what's going to happen is with and my brain just rebooted. The
it happens.
Software-defined networking,
there we go.
SDN, is that there's 15 different vendors that are all pushing 15 different methods of what they say SDN is. And I look at that and say, I think there's a high degree of automation that can happen in the SDN world, that once a decision gets rendered as to what that is going to end up being, whether it's automated configuration, whether it's dynamic network creation, dynamic routing that's different than ever done before, with proper firewalling and segregation, all done from one command console. However that ends up getting done, I think it's going to be a very exciting thing to see. It's just that I still feel like we're many years away from that.
All right, so practical unified SDN. That's a good choice. What about you, Cricket? What's the thing that people need to look out for? And you can't say IPv6.
Damn it. But I was going to say it. I would say that SDN, IoT, Internet of Things, container networking, all of these things need a common layer 3 protocol with a very large address space in order to work properly. At this point, adoption of that protocol that we shall not mention among the U.S.-based mobile carriers is on their backbones is over 50% in most cases.
Right,
AT&T's, Verizon's, it's coming. And folks who have had their head in the sand and who have not done anything to adopt that next generation internet protocol really ought to be doing that within the next several years.
Gentlemen, co-hosts, one and all, thank you so very much. This has been a lot of fun. Our audience has spent over an hour listening to the best dang enterprise podcast in the universe. That's according to 9 out of 10 syncing devices from the 80s and 90s. I want to thank everyone who made this show possible, but more than that, I want to cut some cake because this is a party, and we will cry if we want to. I'm not supposed to have a knife.
Can you be trusted with a knife?
No, really not at all, even a little bit. Let me close this slab. Actually, this is what I'm going to be serving you on. Who would like a slice of chocolate cake? I mean, this is Twilight 200.
I want one.
I'll send it to you.
The cake is a lie.
The cake is, not only is the cake a lie, but it's delicious. It's delicious. This came up from where?
Safeway.
Oh, this came from Safeway. It's a Spanish store in the Mission District of San Francisco. You know, we're gonna. I don't know how to. I've never actually cut.
But it came from Sunnyvale Safeway, so it actually traveled a decent distance to get here.
This cake is an immigrant.
The Safeway is local for the time being,
yes.
right?
Ooh, I got a corner piece.
Well, we like to locally source
corner
all of
piece.
our enterprise cakes. Cheebert and Curtis, what I'll do is I promise you cake the next time we meet. Now, you're not going to be a Black Hat DEF CON yet, right?
No, can't do it.
I am not.
Oh, that's for you.
Thank
That's for
you.
I'm going to have a piece. Kara, would you like some cake? How about you, Kevin? There's no nuts. It's strawberry.
Cake as a service.
Thank you.
Yes,
She's on
I
fleek.
made sure Tim didn't do nuts because I wanted Cranky Hippo to be able to go and have a small piece.
Oh, no, Cranky Hippo's not allergic. It's our TD, Kevin.
Oh.
He's definitely allergic. He has an EpiPen in his pocket, but he doesn't realize that I replaced it with syrup.
Nice.
So good luck with that, Kevin. Hey, hey, Patrick, cake? It's enterprise cake, so, you know, it's got an IPv6 address. Well, I'm going to cut up the rest of this because, well, I'm going to have a piece later on. Well, when I said I'm going to have everything that's not eaten later on because that's what I do. Whoa. Yes, the cake is a lie. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so very, very much. I can't say enough how much it It's just a pleasure to have been bringing you enterprise goodness for 200 episodes. Cheebert, you will remember this. When we first started this, I was very happy to be on the Twit TV network, and I said, hey, you know what? If we get 10 episodes, I'll be happy. And here we are 20 times that later, and we're still going, which go figure. I mean, I guess no one's paying attention.
Still going and going incredibly strong.
Yeah, congratulations to all.
Congratulations.
Yeah. But before we go, we got to do our customary wrap-ups. We're going to start with our guest here. Tim, please tell people where they can find you, where they can find PathSolutions, where they can find the best way to see what's going on in the network, and hopefully give them some warm fuzzies.
They can find me in Sunnyvale, usually. Anyway, PathSolutions, www.pathsolutions.com, root cause network troubleshooting, plain English answers.
There you go. This is the best place to go if you want something in your toolkit that will show you everything going on in your network in just a few seconds. It really is a very cool piece of software. Cricket, we will have you back again when we talk about IPv6 or maybe even some other topics. I know
all right,
you've got a couple things. And actually, we might be interviewing you at Black Hat DEF CON, so go figure. But if they wanted to find out more about Infoblox, they wanted to find out more about your work with IPv6, where can they go?
They can go to our website, which is www.infoblox, that's BLOX.com. And they can find me on Twitter at CricketOnDNS.
Oh, fantastic. And of course, my wonderful, wonderful co-hosts. They really are the show. I'm going to be stepping away from Twilight at some point in the future because I have to. It's scheduled. And I'm so happy that they are going to keep doing our enterprise, wonderful Disneyland-type show thing. Cheebert, please tell the folks where they can find you, where they can find your work.
Well, obviously on Twitter, I got some amazing, amazing suggestions from a whole bunch of people on Twitter just this last weekend, and I am actually going to try and implement some of them. I am actually starting to build the framework for Enterprise Cookbook. We shall see. In fact, I'm going to go try and hit a chef store and get a taupe for my head.
And keep those suggestions coming because, of course, Cheebert can be found on Twitter at ADVNNETLAB. You really got to get a better name than that, Cheebert.
Someone's sitting on Cheebert.
Okay, you should never say that. That just sounds really, really weird. I'm sorry, my friend. Now, someone who people aren't sitting on is Curtis Franklin. Curtis, what's going on at Information Week Radio?
Padre, the big thing that's happening, and this is really kicking off in August, is that we're seeing a much tighter integration between Information Week and Interop. Both are owned by the same parent company, UBM. And so the Interop radio that I've been doing for years, usually in the spring leading up to the Interop show, is going to go year-round. We're going to be starting it next month. There's going to be a slight reordering of the way things are done at Information Week, seeing much closer integration. Basically, Information Week is going to be where you experience the learning, the camaraderie of Interop year-round, and Interop will be where the Information Week community comes together once a year. It should be a really great joining of forces.
Oh, wonderful. And I will be listening, and hopefully I'll be joining you for one of those shows soon because I love working with you, Curtis. It's always a pleasure. And to the newest member of our co-host rotation, even though Windows Phone is all his fault, Lou Maresca from Microsoft CRM Dynamics. Lou, where can people find you and your work?
So you can always find me at LouMM on Twitter. And, of course, check out all the one-week hackathon stuff that has gone public at theblogs.microsoft.com, and all my daily work you could find at microsoftcrm.com.
Gentlemen, it has been an absolute pleasure, and I also want to thank everyone here who makes the show possible, but not until we tell the folks at home where they can find all 200 episodes. Don't forget that you can always go to our show page at twit.tv/Twilight. There, not only will you find our entire back catalog of episodes for download, but you can also subscribe. If you want to get every bit of enterprise goodness into your device of choice automatically, you can get an audio version in your phone so you can listen on the way to work. You can get a video version on a tablet so you can watch on break. You could get the high-definition video version on your PC, your Mac, your Roku, wherever it might be, so you can watch us in all our HD goodness. Again, twit.tv/Twilight. Also, don't forget that you can find me on Twitter at twitter.com/PadreSJ. If you follow me, then you'll know what I'm going to be doing each week on Twite. You'll know what I do when I'm not here at the Twit TV studios. And it's just a good way to communicate with me. If you have a guest, a topic for a future episode, not only can you reach out to Cheebert, but you can reach out to me. Again, that's twitter.com/PadreSJ or Padre@PadreSJ. Also, we want to do a big shout out to, the newest member of the Twite family. That's right. He is our shark man himself. Kevin, I don't know if you have a camera on yourself, but could you say hello to the Twite Riot?
Hello.
Okay. That.
Here.
There. You have lights, right?
1 second.
Oh.
It's loading.
There we go. He had to reboot it too. Well, Kevin, this is the time when we normally do the Stump Kevin series in the show. So the question is this. Since you are a Pokemon master, you know everything there is to know about Pokemon.
Yeah. Oh, well.
What is the evolved form of Padre?
Father Robert Ballecer.
I'm sorry, the answer was Cheebert. Oh, maybe next week. Maybe next week. My bad. We'll try it again next week.
Really?
Until next time. That's Father Robert Ballecer. And I just want to remind you that if you want to know what's going on in the Enterprise, just keep quiet.